and welcome back to BookTube with Amy. This is going to be my most recent weekly wrap up. So first up, as part of my I seriously need to finish that challenge, I read The Lost Plot by Genevieve Cogman, which is the 4th book in the Invisible Library series. So I'm not going to say too much plot wise because it's like the 4th in a series. However, I will say that this has maybe been my favourite instalment of the series so far. I thought it was amazing. It was set in like a Prohibition era 1920s New York. There were mob bosses and jazz and gin, which like is all a bit of me. It was just absolutely fantastic. I think that this one read a wee bit differently for some of the other books in the series. As much as it still was like a fantasy, there was almost elements of it being like a bit of a gangster drama, and the dialogue in this was really brilliant. I read the first one and then I listened to the second and the third one on Audible, and then this one I did part physical, part audio, but just reading this one physically just was amazing because the dialogue was just so good. I was thoroughly gripped. It was like verbal sparring between our main character Irene and some of the other characters, and there was a lot of no trying to give too much secrets away but telling other people enough so you could gain their trust, and there was a lot of espionage and no really knowing who you could trust and who you couldn't trust, which just made it an absolutely thrilling ride. The twists and turns in this were unreal, and like there's always a wee bit of an element of that in the books. I think that because every single book Irene visits a different alternate world, we're met with a fresh cast of characters, but I don't know, the characters in this one to me just seemed really fleshed out. I think maybe because it was just in like a time period that I really enjoy, that I really bought into the characters so much more in this one. So I thoroughly enjoyed that, and like I say, the dialogue and the language in this was just fantastic. It was a bit like if Godfather met Bugsy Malone met the Invisible Library series, which like I didn't know was my dream until I read this, but apparently it is. It was absolutely fantastic and it was a 5-star read for me. Like I say, it's probably my favourite one I've read in the series so far, and that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the others, because I did. I think like apart from, I think the second one was a 3 or a 4-star for me. It wasn't as good as the first one, but then the third and the fourth and the first have all been 5 stars. It's a series that I am thoroughly enjoying. I have the 5th one on my shelf, and like you best believe that I will be reading that this year, and if I can get my hands on the other ones, you know, I might finish this series this year because they're just such a fun time and they're really fast-paced reads, which is something that I enjoy. I think if you are starting a new series, that can be potentially daunting because you're like, oh my god, is this going to be a slog? Especially a series when it's like this and it's an 8-part series and it's not just a trilogy. But they are really quick reads. I highly recommend them. I feel like my channel is basically just an Invisible Library stan account at this point, but they're amazing, so just read them. Then next up, I read Memories of Blood and Shadow, and this is by Aaron S. Jones. So I was sent this by Aaron to review, which was very kind of him, so thank you very much. And considering that this is a chunky floppy boy, I like blitzed through it, which is really good. So I'm not going to say anything spoiler wise because this book isn't out yet. I believe it comes out on the 7th of April. If I am wrong, editing Amy will correct myself here. But this is a high fantasy. We have our main character Tavar, and he's sort of feel like keeping himself to himself. He's not really part of like society, and late one night a couple of guys come to his home and they're asking for shelter from the storm that's happening, and no all is as it seems, and apparently Tavar isn't just a wee shy introverted man, and the travellers weren't actually seeking refuge from the storm. They are there to sort of bust him and find out if he is really who they think he is, and this leads to a wee bit of violence, and then Tavar telling his life story. So I really enjoyed Tavar. I thought that as a character he was, I'm not going to hold this up the entire time because like it's chunky, but he was a really, really good character. I connected to him, to be honest with you, from pretty much the beginning. As soon as he started interacting with the other guys who came to his house, I was like, right, okay, like I've got you pegged, I know where this is going. He was sort of trying not to give too much away, and I like that, because it sort of almost gives the element of it being potentially an unreliable narrator, because we're just as much in the dark as these two visitors and we don't really know where this story is going to go. So I thought that that was interesting. And then just as a character, like I really felt for him. He's had quite the life, and although I didn't always agree with some of the choices that he made, I thought it was such a brilliant character, and I enjoyed finding out his story and everything that he had been through in his life. So I probably read the book mainly for him, to be honest. I enjoyed the world, don't get me wrong, I really did. I just feel like the type of writing it was really heavily descriptive prose, and that's just no my style of writing. I appreciate that this is an epic classic fantasy, and I think that if you like that type of writing, then it's definitely going to be up your street. It just wasn't my favourite type of writing. That's nothing to detract from the story, because I mean I read it all and I devoured it over the course of a couple of days. I did enjoy the story, and I think that, like I say, the character work was done really well. It's just that type of writing is not my favourite, and I just don't get on with it. And that is my issue with a lot of epic classic fantasy. I think that you get away with it if you're Tolkien, because that's nostalgic for me, and I am reading Eye of the World at the moment, and I feel like Robert Jordan's getting away with it a wee bit, because like it's sort of reminding me of Tolkien. But anything other than that, I'm not really here for the big long descriptions, and that's what I tend to find with a lot of adult epic fantasy. That being said, there are adult epic fantasy series that I really enjoy. It's just that type of writing I don't mesh well with. I am a really character driven reader, and so I think that I actually connect a lot more with first person writing as opposed to third person, because then I get to see things through that character's eyes. And I think that that's something that I am realising about my reading tastes over the past year and a half, is the books that I tend to prefer are in first person. It's not something that I've ever really thought about in a huge amount of detail before, but I was definitely finding myself thinking that with this book, because like I say, I was really liking the character, I just wasn't connecting with it in the way that I would usually when I'm loving a character as much as I love Tavar, and I wasn't really connecting with the world, although I felt like it was a really, well, I mean, it wasn't a cool world, it was quite a traumatic world, but I would have totally bought into it, I think, if it was written through first person. So that's a learning for me. However, I did end up rating this one a 3 stars. Characters were great, I did enjoy the story, and I enjoyed elements of the world, so I thought it was a really decent read overall. I just don't think that the writing was for me, but that's nothing against Aaron S. Jones, that's me as a reader. So if you do like classic fantasy a wee bit on the darker side, you should check this out when it comes out in April. So I feel like I don't really have a lot to talk about this week. I've been a wee bit slumpy, sort of the end of February. I don't know why, I've just been really struggling to pick up books since then. And like, it's not like I haven't enjoyed what I've been reading. I really enjoyed the Invisible Library book that I picked up. There's another book that I've started that I've been really anticipating, and I'm bloody reading it, and like I've been so excited for it, and I'm struggling to want to pick it up. So I've been a wee bit slumpy, so it's a wee bit of a quicker wrap up, but hopefully like my arse gets in gear and I'm back on form with my reading. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying everything that you're reading at the moment. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!